everyone. And Emily, Emily, is that me or someone else? Is that all right now? Sounds
Yes.
better. Okay. And Emily, do we have any public comment?
I haven't received any, but I did just, we should go ahead and do the roll call first.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead and do the roll call.
okay. All right. Director Stegman?
Here.
Director Ralston?
Present.
Director Johnson?
Here.
Awesome. Director Lane? I know you're here. I see you.
You can't hear me?
Now I can.
Okay.
Maybe you just lean back. Director Mueller?
Here.
Director Johannes?
Here.
Director Eisenbeis?
Here.
And then I do not see Director Calkins or Director King. Correct? All right. And Chair, I did not hear anything about any public comment, but Mary Helen Kincaid is in that we do have a member of the public at the meeting. So I don't know if you want to check in on that.
Mary Helen, did you have any public comment you wish to give?
Only that I can't get my camera to work, and I don't know if you can even hear me. So,
Yes, I can
We can see you and hear you.
oh, good. If you can see me, well, I don't know. I hope I look okay. No public comment. I would just have a public question, if it can be answered now or later or whenever, is if there's been any progress on the House bills about the lottery funding. I know it got referred to Ways and Means, and I haven't kept up with it.
Okay, I'm not sure what the best process is. Jim, do you have a suggestion, maybe in, I don't know, the director's part, or I don't know if you know the answer that you could quickly give?
Just briefly, both bills are still moving through the legislative session. So there's the lottery grant fund bill that seeks to repopulate the funding from the lottery bonds into the grant fund for levy systems across the state. And then we have a separate ask for the district of 20 million that is, again, in a different bill, and both bills are still alive in the legislative session. There's some more information about that in my director's report.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to leave and try to come back and maybe have a camera.
All right, thank you, Mary Helen. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item 2 for the minutes. Hopefully you all have had a chance to take a look at those. They're on pages 2 through 6 in your packet. And if so, I would entertain a motion to accept the April 17th board meeting minutes as drafted.
So moved.
Thank you, Director. And is there a second?
Second.
And that was Director Eisenbeis. So it's been moved by Director Mueller and seconded by Director Eisenbeis to accept the April 17th, 2025 board meeting minutes as drafted. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The meeting minutes pass unanimously. All right, next up, we have Carrie to talk to us about the Watershed Improvement Plan contract on pages 7 through 18, and we will be taking a board action today. So Carrie, I will turn it over to you. Do we have a Carrie? There she is.
Yes, I just had a connectivity flare, but it seems like I'm back. So we'll hope it holds for the 5 minutes I have to talk with you all today. All right. Okay. So yeah, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. I'm Carrie Sandman. I lead the Planning Department and Environmental Program for the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District. And here today to provide an introduction for the Watershed Improvement Plan and also request your approval for a contract with Knott Studios to provide planning support services for that effort. The recommended motion is at the bottom here. It'll be at the final screen as well, and then it's in your packet. And before we get to that, I'll provide some background on the Watershed Improvement Plan, why we're doing this, what we hope to accomplish, some of the key steps along the way, a summary of the procurement process, where you can expect to hear from us again through this planning process, and then a few minutes for discussion or questions. So at the base of it, the Watershed Improvement Plan is required by ORS 550-260 that we create a plan for watershed and habitat improvement and landscape resilience, starting with a 3-year time frame, starting after when this board was originally seated, so through January of 2028 and every 10 years thereafter. And 3 years is a long time, but also not. So we began scoping in 2024. And began this procurement process in January of this year and are excited and ready to get started. And just more so than it being required, this effort is also just a great opportunity for us to better explore and understand one of our new purposes. It's an opportunity to have a foundation for the work on contributing to water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, landscape resilience, and floodplain restoration in a way that's intentional, strategic, informed by our partners in our community, and technically rigorous. And lastly, to be in conversation with our other planning efforts. So we'll be iteratively connecting this with the work of equity, strategic, and comprehensive planning. Some of the things we expect from this plan are, first and foremost, compliance. Also, that it reflects a deep understanding of the watershed that comes from scientific information and the wealth of knowledge in our community. That we're able to create a shared vision for what it looks like when watershed health and flood safety are mutually beneficial to each other. And that it gives us a broad range of pathways to get there. So solutions, project opportunities that can improve watershed health and flood safety. Amongst those, we expect a number of them to be floodplain restoration and resilience projects. That's a category that's called out in the general obligation bond for funding, and we'll be taking those to the point where we have planning level scope and cost estimates so they can really move smoothly into our engineering, design, and capital improvement process. And then these last two are really about how we hope this plan will work in coordination with our community and with our board and staff. We want to have engaging and accessible information about the planning process throughout and about the results, and that folks understand how their input was used. There was a competitive procurement process for this. We received 9 proposals from teams with 2 to 6 different parties on each team. It was a really robust response from the consulting community. We selected Knott Studio based on their highest score. They're a women-owned firm, landscape design and architecture firm based out of Portland. And the contract value is not to exceed $750,000. It's actually very nearly the average of the bids that we got, which ranged from about $550,000 to $1.8 million. The contract term is just over 2 years. That gives us a little bit of squish. As I mentioned before, we have until January of 2028 to complete this plan per the legislation. So we'll have a little time if there's things come up that we want to spend more attention on. And then the key contract elements or phases of the plan are bulleted here and are also going to be on the next slide with some little yellow stars for when you can expect to hear from us again. So our first step is to do some detailed equity and engagement planning. We have a broad framework, but we want to be sure that we have woven in throughout our process, how we're going to achieve our equity and social justice goals, how we're going to engage with our staff, with our board, with our community partners, with our community members, and with our nonprofit and jurisdictional partners. So we'll be back to you to provide an update in your packet or in your meeting about the results of that. Then we move into characterizing the watershed. That's been done a lot. So it's really about summarizing and pulling together for our context the story of where our watershed is right now. And then efforts to set that vision, that desired future condition. That's another phase that you will be involved in. Anticipate that around January to May, sometime next spring. And then we get into evaluating and identifying specific opportunities, looking through how we're going to implement that, and the final report and communication products, at which point, again, you'll see a draft report and be asked to approve the final report. And that is all I have, though I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you for the presentation, Carrie. Questions or comments? And I can't see everyone, so just speak up. Oh, that's better. Thank you, Carrie. Any questions or comments for Carrie? Director Johannes.
Thank you. I think Erica had her hand up first.
Oh, okay.
Kayla, I think. Kayla,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Yes, that was me, Kayla. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for this. And I'm very excited about this work. I was curious if there's any multi-benefit analysis as a part of the watershed plan, including kind of the wildfire and water nexus work around how any nature-based solutions or how the watershed overall is further strengthened from a wildfire standpoint as well, or if it's strictly from a flood safety standpoint.
It is definitely a multi-benefit exercise on the whole. I think at its foundation, we're looking at opportunities to contribute to improvements in the environment while improving flood safety. So I'd say everything that we're looking at are typically multi-benefit solutions. If they're floodplain restoration opportunities, then we're looking at natural flood storage as well as water quality. We have not contemplated the wildfire component, but that's a really interesting thought. And we do still have many kind of phases of engagement to identify and take input.
Director Johannes, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is a broader procurement question, but does the staff have a sense of how many contracts, that will be above $500,000 this board will be approving before the board strategic retreat?
Lori, do you want to dive in on that? Lori Baker? I don't think that many. We've got a few engineering design contracts, and I think that would be it. But if there's direction around that, we can adapt as well. So
we do have some of our on-call engineering contracts are coming up for renewal, and so we are going through over the summer. We're going through multiple RFP processes for those on-call engineering contracts. So that will be coming to you. Part of them, I think, before we do the strategic planning, but the procurement process will be complete before we do that strategic planning. So those are the major ones that I know of, in addition to the ones that Jim has mentioned.
And Lori, those on-calls are 5-year contracts, not
Correct.
to exceed $500,000. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure about the not to exceed. I think it depends on the type of services.
Thank you.
But they are 5-year contracts, and those allow us to be more agile in our contracting. We will have implemented the equity rulings that we passed by the board just recently. So there will be equity scoring process within those RFPs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Chair Ralston.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thanks, Carrie. Quick question. How do you define the boundaries, or which watershed is going to be in the plan, the scope and the physical boundaries? Is that a statutory definition, or are you going to have some latitude with that?
It is actually, it talks about the definition of what the watershed plan includes is in relation to the managed floodplain.
Got it.
So we're able to, since any, the intention of a watershed plan is to see how these systems work together and affect each other on their appropriate scale. And so there are hydrologic components and ecological components that happen in the Columbia Slough watershed, which is larger than the managed floodplain. But in terms of where we'll be looking for opportunities to make contributions and improve and do project work, that will be within the managed floodplain.
Okay, and then a follow-up, how does this interact or mesh with the Columbia Slough Watershed Council function for planning?
Our plan is specific to our work, so it is meant to provide the basis for our activities in relation to that new purpose. Not just the Columbia Slough Watershed Council, but it's very much our intention through engagement throughout and the implementation plan at the end that we are looking for partnership opportunities in the work that we do. Now, the council is a little smaller than us, but in the scheme of this watershed, we have a lot of big partners that we would love to work with. And so I think throughout the process, we'd like to be finding opportunities to leverage the goals that we have.
Okay, thanks, Carrie.
All right. Any other questions, comments? I'm now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, quick question. And I'm sure this is a more complex answer possibly. So, to whatever level you want to respond to it. But I'm just wondering what went into the choice of this group's proposal when compared to others that you received, both in general and then like in more specific, like what kind of, I guess, stood out from this one, or like what kind of went into that decision?
I can say that our criteria for selection included the understanding of the scope of services, the qualifications of the team, the proposal, kind of the way that they laid out what they expected the work to include. We also had we have an equity section that will be updated based on the new rules, but we had been using that prior as well. And this firm really excelled in all of those areas. Yeah, I'm not sure I can say much more than that.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would say if the board would like, we could probably do a briefing on our procurement process so you guys could understand who participates and so on, and how we select that. And then again, we'd be open to feedback about that. Okay, I'm seeing some head nods and some thumbs up. So Emily, help me remember, let's make some time for that.
I think that gave me a minute to think, Jim. It's also just worth mentioning that as part of that, you'll hear that we put together evaluation teams, and the evaluation team for this process included myself, another planner with a natural resource background, someone from our engineering team, someone from our operations team, as well as a representative from the City of Portland Bureau of Environmental Services.
All right. Vice Chair Ralston, did you have another question, or is your leftover hand? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands. I can only see like 9 people at a time, so please speak up if I miss you. So I'm not seeing any other raised hands. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the Watershed Improvement Plan contract.
I move to approve approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to sign a contract with Knott Studio to develop the Urban Flood Safety and Water Quality District Watershed Improvement Plan with a contract value not to exceed $700,000.
Thank you, Director Calkins. And is there a second? Oh, Carrie, did you have something?
It should be $750,000.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm reading the board packet.
I know the last slide in the board packet that they all got changed except that one. My apologies for that typo.
An important detail for not to exceed $750,000.
Thank you for that correction. All right. And is there a second?
Second.
And who is that second?
Director Lane.
Okay, thank you, Director Lane. All right, it's been moved by Director Calkins, seconded by Director Lane. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any abstentions? All right, the Watershed Improvement Plan contract passes unanimously. Thank you, Carrie. Next up, we have the Gatetower support contract, and I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for providing time today to talk about this important project. This is the Gatetower Design Services contract that we're seeking approval on today. Some of you may have heard of the project before as one of our FEMA accreditation projects, also one of our bond-funded projects. Let's see. These slides working. So yeah, we'll just do a quick recap of the Gatetower project and that we're requesting the board's approval for a contract with Consor North America. This language will appear again at the end of my presentation for the formal approval. It is a $1.4 million design services contract that supports us through the design of the project, the bid phase, and through construction services, and includes some of our newer ORS purposes as well that I'll talk about here in a little bit. For your awareness, this project is located in what we now call our upper slough section and Salmon Creek section. It's a cross levee between those two sections. And there's a gate tower on this side that operates a closure that basically prevents flow from these pipes to this Salmon Creek conveyance, which then goes under Marine Drive and up to the Sandy pump station. It is the only way the upper slough section in this region, anyway, of the upper slough section drains, is it has to drain through this gate tower culvert to the two 42-inch culverts up to the pump station. So talk a little bit about that. This is the gate tower itself that we talked about. It is an antiquated piece of infrastructure. We would not consider rebuilding something like it. It was built in the 50s and it was built by Reynolds Aluminum and the Sandy Drainage District at that time and Multnomah County Drainage District. It was not built by the Corps. It is unusual for our closures to only have a closure on one side. You would literally have to take a boat to this structure if it flooded on the current side, the upper slough section side, which is uncommon. Normally it's a closure down through the center of the cross levee, so you can access it in either case. We were able to successfully clear the culverts. They were clogged and we couldn't get a camera through them for a long time, just toward the end of last year in a project that our planning group led, Mark Wilcox. We were successful. You can see this is a steel riveted pipe, which is also not something that you would use in modern construction. Because of the way the pipes are laid, the invert elevations on either end, we have a lot of issues with them filling in with sediment. They were not, the way we would design it now, we would probably change the invert elevations so that they wouldn't be so prone to filling with sediment. We actually had to remove some of the flap gates that were on the eastern side of it because they became sedimented shut. So we kind of kept it in this quasi constantly partially open state. And I should add that this structure is not something we have climbed with anyone on our crew in years. It's not safe, it's rusty, it's unstable, and it's just kind of obscure. So anyway, that brings us to the history of the project real quick that I kind of touched on. It was built by the two drainage districts in Reynolds Aluminum in 53 and 54. It's a little bit of an odd duct because it wasn't built by the Corps, so there's some features about it that have not stood the test of time well. In 2017, Levy Ready Columbia funded some FEMA accreditation studies, and the closure was not operable. You have to be able to operate any of these closures and penetrations in your levee system at least once a year. And so because we cannot operate that, it doesn't meet the requirements of this Code of Federal Regulations, which is required for FEMA accreditation. In 2022, we worked with ESA to provide some alternatives and kind of make a decision tree about, if we can clear the lines, what we might do if we can't clear the lines, even if we can't clear the lines, we want the lines, that kind of thing. Provided all of that out, also the information that we had to date when we took this out for a contract. In May of 2024 last year, we passed, and had specifically identified this FEMA Gatetower flow structure project. It is bond funded. And in last year, as I said, we successfully worked with the contractor to construct those cofferdams and clear those culverts and give us a picture of what we're actually dealing with. Our procurement process had five district staff members on that panel. There was 3 engineers, member from planning, Mark Wilcox, who has a lot of project history, and also someone from our operations group that has dealt with this for a very long time. Josh McNamee has been with the district for about 25 years. He's actually climbed that gate tower and can confirm that it is a harrowing thing to do. And then so we had 5 highly qualified and responsive teams. We narrowed that down to 2. We could not really get past come to an agreement necessarily on the 2 because they were both seemingly so qualified, and we took them into an actual interview phase after that, and then we were able to unanimously select Consul North America after the interview process. So as I said, we have a $1.4 million contract. We are going to mostly orient that in 3 phases. The initial phase includes, we start with the equity by design work early so that it can feed into all stages of design as it develops. We're going to be including climate analysis, which will probably help us down the road when we have more work and plan for a broader kind of like climate master plan type effort. Sort of an initial one, just to kind of, I guess, better help characterize what we might be dealing with and kind of be forward thinking about what kind of flows we might be dealing with in the future at this location. Also looking at sediment transport analysis because sediment has been such an issue at this location and will likely inform heavily whether or not we can keep or should keep the current pipes and try to restore those versus is it better to just fully excavate and put in more modern culverts. And then they will help us with our bid phase and then also help us throughout construction to provide any structural inspection or services and review of contractor change orders if there are any, or RFIs from the contractor. So that is my presentation, and I am opening it up for questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments?
Kevin, you want to stop sharing so the chair can see everybody?
Yep.
Thank you.
Just a request, if you could send out a copy of those slides, that would be great.
Will do.
Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing anyone. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the presentation. I would entertain a motion around the Gateway Support Contract.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve and authorize the Executive Director or their designee to sign a contract with Consor North America, Inc. for the Gatetower Structure Replacement Engineering Design Bid Build Services with a contract value of $1,400,000.
Thank you, Director Miller. And is there a second?
I second.
Let's see. I see Director Johnson on my screen, so I'm going to give it to her. All right. It's motion by Director Mueller, seconded by Director Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Let me make sure. I'll look at my screens here. I'm not seeing any hands. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously for the Gatetower support contract. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Madam Chair, just to shout out to our planning and engineering teams, and this is the product of that whole Levy Ready Columbia multi-agency, multi-collaborative that did all the initial funding. So again, just sort of the fruition of a lot of community-based hard work, and think it's in these times useful to remember that we can come together and do hard things. So thank you, board, for your support. Thank you, team, for all the hard work to get us here.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, definitely. It is pretty exciting to see literally, I don't know, a decade of work by so many people. And we're actually getting to spend some of that money. We're seeing the money go out the door, the projects actually happening. So it is exciting. Thank you, Jim. All right, next up, we have the resolution of need for the PMLS, for PMLS real estate, and I'll turn it over to Amber.
Thank you, Lori Stegman. This is Amber Ayers. You have met me several times now through the last few board meetings. Nice to see you all, this time virtually. Today I come with you with the resolution of need as a follow-up from some of our discussions related to some important real estate acquisitions. This is related to a parcel that we need to acquire in any actually design or alternative that has been proposed for our levee improvements. And this is the first and parcel and pretty much the only parcel that we have identified as a full out needing to acquire. And this would be a full fee acquisition for the entire parcel. So I am bringing forward this resolution today, also with hopeful of bringing upon all the background information that we have set forward last month, and wanted to have any discussion that was necessary.
Thank you, Amber. Questions, comments? I see Director Mueller.
Yeah, I just was wanting to clarify, this is just the very first step in a very long series of steps. So we won't be running off to the title office to sign tomorrow, right?
No, Eric, this is, you are correct. And if you recall, this is definitely that the resolution of need sets the stage for us to be able to proceed, a notice of proceeding with the appraisal process. And so essentially this will give us once we have a notice to proceed, we will put together a general information packet, and we will have a notification to the property owner. They will have a 15-day notification of the appraisal process. They can also decide to have their own appraisal done afterwards if they so choose. They are expecting this appraisal to take about 6 weeks. So we're a little bit, could be close to kind of the end of our fiscal year.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? All right, I'm not seeing any. I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve resolution number 2025-05-1, declaring public necessity and authorization to acquire fee title to property for the Portland Metro Levee System project, authorizing staff to proceed with the appraisal process and necessary steps for property acquisition.
Thank you, Director Lane. And is there a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
And that was Director Mueller. All right, it's been motioned by Director Lane, seconded by Director Mueller to approve the resolution of need for PMLS real estate. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. The resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Amber.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, next up, we have a public comment policy discussion, and Emily, I will turn that over to you.
Great. So when we discussed, I believe it was when we adopted your bylaws, there were some questions about any sort of policies or procedures we had around public comment. And so it was requested that we put together a recommendation for you all. And so staff has drafted this. This is a kind of a very basic outline of public comment policy. It's in line with what most other jurisdictions do as far as timing and process. We can always adopt sort of internal procedures that are more specific, but this is quite general. I threw this all on a slide just to cover the high points of this. So this establishes that we would have public comment at the top of every agenda. In some cases, as like I outlined in my memo, there's specific requirements for public comment, such as certain types of things that you're adopting, but this is for just a general meeting. We request that people contact us ahead of time. They don't have to, but obviously that makes it easier. Sometimes we can answer questions without them needing to come to a meeting, or we can just be better prepared for whatever they're bringing to, but they're not required to let us know. We listed up to 3 minutes per person, or leaving that at discretion of the presiding officer. Certainly if there's a ton of people wanting to provide comment, that allows some flexibility to shorten it, or if it's the high quality dialogue, we can always allow a little extra time if it's available. It does request that written testimony be submitted the day prior. That way we can enter that as part of the official meeting record. And then it's up to the presiding officer whether or not we read that out loud. And then it offers some flexibility that you can suspend these rules if you need to. I think certainly that's meant to cover if anyone is disrupting the discourse or causing an issue. There's some language in there that allows sort of to suspend this and keep order and decorum. So this is very broad, as I mentioned, and I'd be interested in any feedback or thoughts or questions, concerns.
Thank you, Emily. Questions or comments? Director Johannes.
Thank you. Just one quick question. Is it the requirement to provide your address? Is there a legal reason we need to include that when people sign up, or is it sufficient for them to just provide their name?
So I included this because generally it's helpful to understand if people are constituents or not. A few cases at times, depending on the issues, people can come from out of state or like anywhere. If there's something that's particularly hot button issue, it's helpful for us to be able to dissect that kind of feedback. But I think that's not a legal requirement at all.
Okay, then I wonder if we might replace that with even something more general like a zip code, so as not to create some kind of privacy barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Director Eisenbeis.
Thank you, Chair. My question was the same as Director Johannes's, so I appreciate her question and suggestion. I agree.
Let's see, Director Lane.
Thanks. I just wanted to know if we could include provisions for requesting reasonable accommodation.
Yes. So we, that's something, at least when I drafted this, that's something that's more included in like the procedure for us. We have information about that on our website. And if you went to our website and looked at how do I come to a meeting, that information would be there. We could include something general about what we'll do, but the specifics about how to request it or what we are able to provide can fluctuate and hopefully continue to improve over time. And so that is my only hesitation about sort of putting that in this, is that those specifics there can change over time. But yes, that is part of like the overall procedure for welcoming people to our board meetings.
Gotcha. And specifically, what I was thinking of was, you in a place or two, we note, please provide comments 24 hours in advance. If there's a relevant timeline there, that might be nice to have that information with everything else. That could be helpful.
Yes.
But
That-
if it's
yeah.
available, I'm happy. Thanks.
Director Mueller.
Yes, thank you. In as it relates to some of the previous comments, I guess I was just going to offer the suggestion that what is frequently used out here in East County is that the mayor will ask the person to state their name and city of record or their city of residence rather for the record, rather than an address or a zip code. It might be fine, but agreed. It helps to understand whether it's an activist organization from San Diego who might be wanting to testify, which is fine, or whether it's somebody who lives in the managed floodplain, which may have a different weighting considered. I had sent an email into when I had read through this in the packet and copied the chair and vice chair that I feel like this policy as drafted is a bit wider than I would be comfortable with. I'm all for us receiving written comment because many times comments from the public require research and follow-up and or investigation by the staff, and having it happen on the fly isn't always the best use of everyone's time. So happy to have written comment, and I think similar to what was done during the budget written comment, then the staff can then forward that information out to the board so that they are certainly aware of the comment as well as whatever follow-up information that staff pulled together to help address some of the issues. I'm not supportive of it as it currently is because I feel like it's too wide open. We have, I believe, in a number of places, like even in one of the contracts that we approved earlier in this meeting, we have public outreach, community engagement activities where we're seeking input from the public and more appropriately on projects and so forth that are going to affect them in their neighborhoods. I think the Corps does outreach when they have different milestones that they reach. And I know staff engages with homeowners associations and community organizations. I feel like the board meetings are the business meeting of the corporation or the organization, and that generally the public feedback is going to be better context in some of those other venues. There are certain actions that require us in certain statutes to have a public hearing, some related to land use actions. And as we had last month, the local budget law, not the public meetings law, but the local budget law requires public hearings. And in fact, we'll have 3 public hearings on the budget before we adopt it. We've had one, we'll have one with the TSCC, and we'll have another one when the board formally adopts. But as the Oregon Public Meetings Law goes, one of the reference guide from the Justice Department and the Open Oregon summarized it, I thought, well, in that the public meetings law guarantees the public the right to view government meetings, but does not necessarily to speak at them. Governing bodies set their own rules for citizen participation and public comment. So again, from my standpoint, it's a bit too broad as it's currently drafted, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to try and put together an alternative in the time frame between reading it this weekend and our meeting today. And so I can't support it in its current format, and had mentioned that I wanted to have it tabled until we had time to consider alternatives. So those are my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Mueller. Director Eisenbeis.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself disagreeing with Director Mueller in part of his comments, in that I do not read this policy to require any response on the part of staff to comments that are made. So I think it's important to bear that in mind if I'm understanding it correctly. However, I would like to offer one suggested revision that might be responsive to part of Director Mueller's concern, which is in the second sentence of the third paragraph, where it states this limit may be extended at the discretion of the presiding officer, to revise that to say this limit may be further limited or extended at the discretion of the presiding officer, so that if it appears that there are quite a few people who are interested in signing up to provide public comment, that the chair has the discretion to manage that and conduct the business of the district board.
Thank you, Director. Other questions or comments? So I agree with the first issue of going back, and maybe I think for me, like either the city or the zip code, definitely not the person's full address, but because I'm thinking that you could live in Portland and not live in the district. So I think maybe the question would be, maybe that's just the question, whether the constituent is in district or out of district. Anyway, Emily, I'll let you play around with that. But I do think it's helpful to know. I mean, I guess I kind of would want to know all, like, are they within our district? Are they outside of our district, but still maybe in Portland? Or are they from another state? I think all three, but so it kind of sounds like there's some wordsmithing. And Director Mueller, I guess I kind of, honestly, as challenging as it can be at times to receive a lot of public comment, I do feel like that is something, and yes, there's nothing in Oregon statute that says we have to, open it up and engage with our constituents as broadly as I think what's being presented. I guess I would rather err on giving people opportunities. And yes, while we have specific like budget meetings and people can come to those, I think accessibility can be a challenge. Sometimes you don't know, like, what meeting am I at? Can I talk about this at this time? So, I mean, I guess I would just lean more having open opportunities for people to come and give testimony. And you're right, people, again, I don't think it's in statute where staff has to reply to our constituents, but I think it's a good practice. And I think responding to those questions and copying the board is helpful. So that's where I'm at on all of that. So I'll, Director Mueller, questions, comments?
I guess I would just acknowledge that clearly I'm on the opposite side of what the other comments are. My experience with public comment is that it falls into two categories. We have members of the public coming from some sort of group, special interest, looking for a sponsorship, looking for funding for a special event. That's a typical public comment. Again, and of course, my experience is in cities, and so it's a general government versus a special district with a more narrow focus. But anyway, that's the one category. And then the other category, which tends to be probably 80% of them, is people are coming to express dissatisfaction. And by and large, those issues require research and follow-up on the part of staff, because it's generally not going to be something that a board member is going to be versed in the details of. And so again, my feeling is that written comments are going to be more productive for all concerned. And as we already see, our board agendas are jam-packed full. We have more to do than we've got time for. And so I'm not in favor of having us get diverted off on unplanned and random topics that we don't really have the ability to be productive in responding to on the fly.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I appreciate that, Director Mueller. And maybe I know on other boards that I've participated on, we also can set like a time limit of, you know, whatever it is, 10 minutes for public testimony. So anyway, those are all some things. And so Emily, I'll turn it over to you. And then we'll go to Director Johannes. So I don't know if you wanted to comment.
Director Calkins, you might be off of the chair's screen.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I just wanted, I know you haven't had a chance to speak. Did you want to weigh in?
Director Calkins.
Thank you. And Eric, I appreciate your perspective, or Director Mueller, I appreciate your perspective on this and your experience as well. I think as a newer board member and thinking about decision making, having opportunities to hear before I was imagining a scenario where it's related to specific items on the agenda that folks can view and would have perspectives on that we may want to hear in advance. I would want to hear in advance of making a decision, but I recognize that there could be a broad range of things that folks bring. But even relative to complaints, I feel like that with the 3-minute limit and a potential time frame kind of for how much time is allowed on the agenda overall to balance against the priority items that we have to move through, I think I err on the side of wanting to hear from folks who are offering that opportunity still. And I do wonder, I mean, I guess we had some written last meeting, but we haven't had nobody's knocking down our doors right now. I guess they could be in the future. But I think with the consideration of these topics, it still feels like it's moving the right direction to me.
Thank you, Director. Director Johannes.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the differentiation between our in-district and district constituents is important, but I would caution us not to create that distinction where it may not be necessary. When I think about the formation of the new district, or even some of the items later in the agenda around federal strategy, statewide funding strategy, and other jurisdictional partners, the truth is that our base of support and our constituents expand beyond the district. And I think having a welcoming posture and being, sort of open and accessible and transparent will help us meet our broader objectives.
Thank you, Director. Director Lane, did you have comments?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate all of the perspectives that folks are offering. And I appreciate the potential pitfalls that Director Mueller sees or perhaps has experienced in other roles. But I think I also lean more toward let's make ourselves available. Let's offer the opportunity. If we find that our meetings are being overrun by hundreds of off-topic comments, I would strongly suggest we come back and revisit our policy. But I would want to start personally from a more open position, and then adjust as needed. I kind of am in the same vein as Director Calkins. So far people aren't lining up to take all of our board meeting time, so I'm willing to take that risk. And if it turns out that our meetings are getting derailed by tons of comments, then we could come back and tighten things up.
All right, Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think some of the things we can include in sort of our procedural pieces and descriptions for what people should expect when they come to the meeting. I think letting them know that they shouldn't expect like a back and forth or a dialogue, that they shouldn't expect the board to necessarily answer the questions they have on the spot, but if they want to provide comment, I think some of that stuff can stay outside of the general policy, but we can make sure that there's sort of procedures and what to expect that would hopefully not give people the wrong impression when they show up that they're going to be able to have us answering to whatever their concerns are on the spot, or that they're going to have an ability to make a influence those decisions throughout. I know that's other issues we've had as people wanting to weigh in throughout the agenda or things. So we can clarify that stuff in more like procedural documents.
Jim.
So what I'm hearing is, should the board choose to adopt this policy, there are several amendments that have been proposed. So I wanted to see if I could capture those accurately so staff could follow through should you decide to adopt the policy. The first is, we'd like to know the city people live in and whether they live in the district or not, or some fashion like that. We don't want it to be exclusive, but we want to have that information. 2, Director Eisenbeis proposed an amendment, I don't remember the specific line, where the chair or the presiding officer can extend or reduce. So there's an additional couple of words. And did I get it? There's one more. Now it slipped. I'm so sorry. Emily, you maybe got it.
Just discussion about including like some basic information about requesting accommodations.
Yes. And if nothing else, maybe linking to that part or showing a website link to where we keep that up to date.
I think that, yes, I think you summarized that well, Jim. Did others agree he captured everything? I'm seeing head nods. So if that's the case, Emily and Jim, so do you need to come back to us, or do you want to make these amendments?
Really up to you guys. You can direct us to approve it with those amendments, or we can bring it back to you.
I'd like to suggest that I can go back and make these, and then we can put it on sort of a consent agenda at the next one, just so you all can see what we have. And if you'd like to discuss it any further when you see it at the next meeting, then we can, would be my recommendation.
That sounds good.
That's a good idea. There's no need to rush and get it wrong.
All right, give me a thumbs up if you all agree with that. All right, I'm seeing thumbs up on screen 1. Sorry, it takes me a while. Oh, I see screen 2. All right, we got thumbs up. Thank you all. Okay, thank you so much, Emily. Next up, we're going to receive a briefing from Matt Berlin around our emergency operations plan. Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. Hey, does everyone see slides and no notes?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Great, thanks. Thank you, Chair Stegman. Thank you, everyone. My name is Matt Berlin. I'm the emergency planner with the district. Thanks for your time today. For this presentation, I want to talk to you about the district's emergency operations program, and I want to provide an introduction to the program, where it sits now, and an update on a significant transition to how we plan, implement, and talk about our emergency preparedness and response at the district. This information is intended to set up my next visit in July, where I'll return to present the emergency operations plan and ask for your adoption of that plan. There's a lot of information here. I know it's my first time talking about this topic with you, so I do want to start at a relatively high level and work my way down so that I can set expectations for July. I'll welcome questions during or after these slides, but I'll just jump right in. So emergency management in general, for those that aren't familiar, is about a coordinated process through which communities, organizations like ours, and governments at all scales work to prevent, mitigate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergency incidences. What this entails is usually words like framework, community resilience. We work to reduce community vulnerability and build resilience in communities so they can better cope with hazards and disasters. We work to coordinate and integrate activities that are necessary for those communities to manage natural disasters, human-made disasters, acts of terrorism. This is very broad when it comes to emergency management. For the district, it's a constant process to improve our capabilities to manage and respond to and prepare for flood emergencies. So the district's emergency management work is really about responding to the flood emergencies. It's based on that. All aspects of the district's work are part of our emergency management approach. It really starts with our operations team. Their work in operating and maintaining the flood management system is the first line of defense and the most effective emergency management strategy. But our program is designed to prepare for the low probability, high risk event. And that's what we build these program elements around. Parts of that include utilizing the incident command system, which I'll talk about in detail on the next slide. We conduct demonstrations, trainings, and exercises to keep our skills sharp. We participate in capital project planning. Across the board, lots of the projects that you hear about have an element of emergency management in them. And we work hard with interagency coordination. In fact, yesterday I was able to participate in the port's triennial exercise for the Federal Aviation Agency. It's a big community. We are part of it. It's a good network of folks where skills and communication and resources are things that are communal, and we work hard to be a part of that network within this program. The incident command system is my favorite part of our organization, and this is an approach that's defined by the National Incident Management System as part of FEMA. The ICS applies to all sizes of emergencies. It outlines clear roles and responsibilities for people who are involved in the response to an incident. It protects chain of command and span of control, which are really fancy words that really talk about how much responsibility one individual has, and it keeps that responsibility at a reasonable level. Which helps to promote responsibility and accountability during an incident and helps to facilitate resource tracking and sharing. That top right structure that you see there is a very typical incident command structure. And our organization, many of the faces that you've come to know through board presentations, many of those faces wear extra hats. And when we go through an emergency and our incident management team is activated, many of us will pivot into this structure and begin to support our operations team to make sure they have what they need in the field. And we do that by looking very carefully at what the weather forecast says, as well as a lot of other factors that will influence whether it's time to activate and do that support. Our organization, typically operations will deal with what the national level calls a type 5 incident, where, as I like to say, our ops team is out, dealing with small scale emergencies all the time. Our organization has the ability to provide a type 3 response, which is that middle level there. And it's worth pointing out that we are not capable of being the lead, nor do we have the authority to be the lead agency with a large regional emergency. So when an incident escalates beyond our capacity, we become part of a greater effort that involves the county, the city, even the state, and sometimes even the federal government if the incident escalates to that level. So since 2016, we've had our Flood Emergency Action Plan as the central tool in our emergency management. This document details emergency tactics that are based on rising elevations in the Columbia River. It's focused on the low probability, very high risk event of a Columbia River flood. You can see on the slide there that it defines our levels of operation from standard to enhanced operation, to partial emergency activation, to full emergency activation. And we monitor the weather service and we monitor the elevation of river levels, and we keep track of that. And as water begins to rise, we have a series of tactics that we take to protect and prepare for changing conditions within the districts based on Columbia River flooding. This document also summarizes in over 240 pages how our organization is shaped, its authority, how we manage resources, how we communicate during an incident. It is a large document with a lot of valuable information, and it has been the cornerstone of this program. But that's not the only type of emergency that the district faces. In 2023, we joined the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. That's quite a mouthful. We often call it the NHMP, which identifies the many other natural hazards that the district and our partners face, and it helps position us to receive federal support when we experience a seismic event, a volcanic eruption, air quality due to smoke, fire, landslide risk, all of those kinds of different hazards. What it really points to is that as an agency, the Federal Emergency Management Agency over the last 20 years has really shifted to what they call an all hazards lens. Where organizations like ours need to look beyond the immediate and most important hazard and start thinking about it from a broader perspective. So in addition to being part of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, we've learned a great deal through our many exercises that we've conducted, as well as the many incidents that we've experienced over the last several years that have helped to identify the need for clarity around tactical responses and our processes within our organization to support those responses. In 2024, we developed the Drainage Emergency Action Plan, which complements the Flood Emergency Action Plan, and it identifies hazards within the levee system. So flooding within the levee system that's not from the Columbia River, but rather stormwater drainage within the levees. And it identifies the specific actions that are required to mitigate those impacts. And as part of the program, we exercised that plan in January of last year and identified that we needed more clearer resource management processes. And so we held an additional workshop in the fall to outline our resource management processes and get a lot more clarity around that so that we are, in fact, more prepared when we face a real incident. So the FEEP, the 2016 FEEP, has a great deal of information, but we need help in outlining all the varying hazards that we face and all of the varying processes that we need in order to be as prepared as possible to face those hazards. So typically when we have questions like that, we look to FEMA for guidance. And for over 20 years, they've produced what they call a comprehensive preparedness guide to help organizations like ours, and specifically this guide, the Developing and Maintaining Emergency Operations Plan, to evolve and to consider the needs and the specific direction and needs of an organization like ours. So in general, an emergency operations plan helps to outline roles and responsibilities. It clarifies lines of authority. It helps us to coordinate emergency response and recovery efforts. It helps us identify impacts and consider impacts to vulnerable communities, resource management, interagency coordination, and coordination and integration with other plans and programs. It's a really great tool because as we were working through our Drainage Emergency Action Plan, the consultants were really talking to us about the need for a higher level plan that could really guide our tactical work. The best part about these tools is that they are meant to be tailored to a specific organization. So for our organization, that means looking at flood mitigation as the top hazard that we address, But in addition, any natural hazard that could prevent us from providing flood mitigation, for example, a seismic event that prevents us from being able to access our pump stations, or that might threaten the integrity of our pump stations so that they may not function as we expect, or conditions that may threaten the safety and health of our staff while they're trying to provide the services that they provide. These are things that we not only need to be prepared for, we need to outline, and we need to have clear action plans that help our staff and help our community be as prepared as possible in those incidents. So what does it mean then to shift to an EOP framework? Well, by adapting to the framework, we'll be able to think about our emergency response at all levels of emergency management, from our strategic, our operational, and our tactical levels. The tools at these levels would then be able to be managed at an appropriate level. And where it starts, if we think about the FEEP really defines what our scope is and what our priorities are and what our authority is. But then it also goes into how we function, how we manage resources, and how we communicate during an incident, which is more of an operational level set of tools, and even our tactical tools, which are about how we act and how we implement strategies. So the EOP framework would then take this body of work and it would divide it into a more robust set of tools, where it starts with an EOP, what they call a base plan, which really defines our scope and defines our priorities and is our authority. And it's the kind of thing that maybe we would update every 3 or 5 years, and we would seek board signature for that. The second component would be our functional annexes, which define how we operate and how we acquire and manage resources and how we communicate. And that would be something that we would update as needed. And finally, the last component would be our threat hazard specific annexes, which are really our tactics. And those would be updated every time we have an incident and every time we have an exercise. When we learn more or better information, we sharpen our tools with that information and we move forward with a better resource. So this gives us an opportunity to really start thinking about how best to deliver our emergency management services to our constituents so that we are as prepared as possible moving forward. So the reason for making a shift like this is that we're able to obtain clearer lines of authority. We are able to, again, have the ability to update our tactics without needing to update our strategies. And I think that will be a major improvement where we can adjust, some of the information that is in our drainage emergency action plan. An example, my favorite example, let's say, would be which culverts are the greatest choke points within the 13th Avenue pump station basin. And currently that information would be within the FEEP document, which would require board approval and signature in order to get updated. And so this proposal would allow us to have a more hands-on opportunity to manage our tactics in these plans. In addition, we'd be able to really dive in on how our organization functions in an emergency and outline the processes that allow us to do things like call the county for additional resources, additional equipment, a flood fighting team, that kind of resource that we can have at our disposal if we need it. Tactical readiness, having this information ready to go, ready to be updated, means that when operations or when our COOP trained staff or when additional teams need to be brought in from the county, that they're ready to go and they're able to be as ready as possible and be able to update those tools on the fly. And then finally, being aligned with our federal partners and our statewide partners gives us the ability to work more closely with them in the moment and be more prepared with them looking down the road as we face, an uncertain climate and an uncertain future. So the next steps for this whole process is to bring this all together in the first product of this, which would be the base plan of the emergency operations plan framework. We're in the middle of reviewing the draft and finalizing that, and I'd like to bring that back in July to seek the adoption of that. And then if and when that is adopted, we will move forward with approving the functional annexes that we have in the works. And we will also update our tactical plans. And then we will use this program to work through our functional annexes and hazard specific annexes over the next few years so that we can achieve a fully mature EOP framework. And that's what I have to share. I would love to hear any questions.
Chair
Chair,
Stegman, you're on mute.
Okay, there you go.
if you can't see, it looks like you've got Director Ralston and Director Calkins.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Ralston. Sorry, I had my mic on mute.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks, Chair. Quick question. Is there anything written in either of the current plans or the draft plans that'll be coming out that specifies any particular role for board members during an event of any sort, you know, small incidentals or major ones? And if so, you know, what might that be that the board members might need to be prepared for? And I'm thinking about things like, you know, calling an emergency meeting of the board to authorize X, Y, or Z that might be in the plan. Or is the plan developed so that really the board just stays out of the way, lets the staff execute the plan, and then as things calm down, the board comes in and supports us where we can?
I think that's an excellent question. I'm going to ask Jim to add to what my response is, Jim or Lori. But we do specify the role of the board in the emergency management framework. The executive director has through adopting and signing the emergency operations plan, you'll delegate the authority to the director to activate the emergency response process. That means activating the incident management team and declaring an emergency. Other than that, I think we have the option to accept the board's recommendations on how the board would like to be reflected in the operations plan.
And I think that's correct. And then I serve more of a liaison function as the agency administrator, won't be in the direct chain of command through the incident management team. So I'll be spending my time at the direction of the incident commander, coordinating with the board, seeking resources from the board, or likely working with our liaison officer or communications officer to activate you guys to help us with our coordination activities. But I want to stress to the board members that we don't expect you to put your rubber shoes on and come help us flood fight. That is not an expectation. If those of you who are interested in getting trained to support our operations crew, we could probably develop some training opportunities where you guys could be called upon to support us in a volunteer capacity. And I'm open to other ideas or suggestions from the board and talking with you about creating opportunities. But, you know, candidly, your best role for us is going to be making sure you and your families are safe, particularly if you're in the floodplain, and otherwise helping us communicate our needs and updates to the community to help them know where to report and what they can do to stay safe or speed their recovery.
Right. Thanks. And so it's a real quick follow-up. When you bring the draft in to the board for consideration in July or whenever, beforehand, maybe I'd like to at least have highlighted where the sections of that plan reference the board roles. And so if we choose to, we can have a bit of a conversation around that and make sure everybody's clear about what might be adopted.
Absolutely.
And maybe one other place, Matt, for you to help us remember to highlight is, once an emergency is declared, what decisions get delegated to me or to an incident commander? Because there are some changes. I don't want to say changes. There are things that can happen to our procurement processes and so on once an emergency is declared. So if the board wanted to exercise a different oversight role than the director's ability to do some of those things, that would also be a good place for you guys to have some dialogue.
Indeed.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Director Calkins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt. I too am a special kind of nerd that really loves this work, and I believe that our constituents would be very glad that it's happening. And much like so much of the invisible handwork that the team does, ensuring that we have really strong coordination here is critical. I'm curious between type 3, which is where the district tops out from an incident command standpoint, and recognizing that type 2 and type 1 are more rare. Is this built in coordination with the county or the state to understand what handoff would look like if something escalates from a type 2 to a type 3?
That is a constant and ongoing conversation. I think my experience with that discussion is really, it's about interagency communication, of course. We would, I think in general, it's hard to predict what the situation is going to look like. That's the first thing. It's hard to know when exactly that line is crossed. But I think it's easier for us to think about when we start to fall behind in our capabilities and capacity to respond. And it starts with our resources not being enough to support operations. The moment that we see that a forecast is manifesting on the ground in conditions when things like a power outage or a major malfunction of equipment occurs, our resources get pretty thin pretty quickly. If we start to see river conditions or stormwater drainage problems start to arise at a significant level within and outside of the district, we know that the issue is probably going to be a regional one, and we will have already talked to our county Emergency Operations Center at that point. They're going to be the ones who make the call for the county. And that ongoing conversation will be the responsibility of our director and our liaison officer to be woven into that. So with that, it's very hard to say specifically when the transition happens, but it happens gradually as an incident will escalate. And the actual act of the transition is an easier thing because we do have that transition spelled out very clearly. And so I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, Matt, thank you. We appreciate the presentation. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to move us to the next item. And Jim, you had a correction that we needed to go back to.
I apologize. I should have been paying closer attention, but on the motion related to the Gatetower, we need you guys to reapprove that motion, and I'm posting the correct language. The words "not to exceed" need to be included in it. Thank you, Director Eisenbeis, for noting that, and Lori for being prompt and confirming it. So the request of staff is that you redo your motion approving the Gatetower contract, and again, the appropriate language is in the chat.
Thank you for pointing that out. All right, I would entertain a new motion that Jim has so kindly put in the chat.
Does it have to be the same way around it was before? Or can anyone?
Anyone
can do it.
Then, Madam Chair, I move to approve and authorize the executive director or their designee to sign a contract with Consor North America, Inc. for Gatetower structure replacement engineering design by bid build services with a contract value not to exceed $1,400,000.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Is there a second?
Second.
And was that Director Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Director. It's been moved by Director Johnson and seconded by Director Eisenbeis to approve the Gatetower support contract. All those are any further discussion? Okay, not hearing none, not hearing any. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your going back.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. All right. Next Next up, we have Lori Baker for a quick financial report. Lori.
Very quick, I promise. So in your packet today, you have the March financial statements. I am going to figure out how to control my slides here. Let me move you all off of my screen. So the district has $17.7 million in revenue for the fiscal year to date, which aligns with the fact that collections are fully underway for our major sources of revenue, with collection of property assessments close to complete and 3/4 of the flood safety benefit fee also collected. The flood safety benefit fee is billed and collected quarterly. Property assessments are collected by the county on the property tax bill, which is due annually on November 15th. You can see that we've collected almost $9.4 million in assessments through March, which is the full amount of the annual assessment that we anticipated collecting this year. We've billed and collected the vast majority of the first 3/4 of the flood safety fee, which is billed directly to the cities and to the county for unincorporated areas in the district. Grant revenues include state dollars for the 13th Avenue Pipe project of $720,000 and 4 accreditation projects of $735,000, and from FEMA for the PIR pump station project of $606,000. Interest rates on our LGIP account were higher than anticipated in the budget for the first half of the year, which means that the earnings are higher than budget. The state is reducing that rate quite regularly at this point in the year, so we don't anticipate the current trend to continue through the end of the year. Intergovernmental agreements include $722,000 from the city of Portland and $166,000 from the port. So on this slide, you'll see our general fund spending results by budget appropriation line. These lines are the appropriation amounts with which we are required to stay within in order to comply with the Oregon local budget law. So in that first column, you'll see our annual budget by appropriation line. The next column shows you the actual spending for year to date. The third column is new. I've done an updated projection for the full fiscal year so you can see where we're projecting to end for the year. And then the fourth column gives you the variance. So you can see that we are anticipating being under budget on all of our appropriation lines, which is good news for us. And with that, I will stop sharing. And if you have any questions about the financials, I'm happy to answer them, or we will be taking a look at April in just a couple weeks at our next board meeting.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Any quick questions, comments? Not seeing any. All right, Lori. Vice Chair Ralston, your hand is up. Is that a leftover hand? Just want to make sure. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Lori, for that report. At this time, we are going to go into executive session and would ask, I'll bring Tracy, I'll turn it over to you, but I believe we're going to ask all staff to drop off the call. Is that correct?
Thank you, staff.
Yes. Can you go, will you go ahead and read this citation onto the record, and then I'll stop the recording and exit the meeting?
What do you want me to do, Emily?
Did you read the citation for that? Yes. So go ahead and put that on the record.
All right. So do I need to adjourn this other meeting that we're in, or is we're fine?
No, I would just say that the board is now entering an executive session pursuant to.
Yes. Okay. So the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board will now meet in executive session under ORS 192.6602I and 192.6608 to evaluate the performance of an employee. Staff and consultants designated by the board at this time shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All others should leave the meeting space. Board members are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will adjourn the meeting.
And Madam Chair, you will need to come back into public session to adjourn the meeting. So we'll do that at the end.
Okay. All right, very good.
Tracy, do you want me off and you're going to text me when